I made a survey quickly online and I gave people on YouTube and also my Discord server just under 24 hours to be able to vote on which hunters they thought were the most powerful hunters in quick match and also in rank match, rating them from 5 to 1, 5 being the strongest, 1 being the weakest. And I must say we did get some very interesting results. Here I have the tier list. I've got D tier to all the way up to S tier. S tier would be the strongest hunters and D tier would be the weakest. Doesn't mean that you can't play them in rank or anything like that, but you're usually going to lose a lot more, and S tier hunters usually have more wins overall. How I've done the calculations is I've done an average for every single hunter's score. So depending on their score, they'll be put different places. If they're above 2 but below 2.5, then they'll be in D tier, and so on, so on, so on. Let's begin with the powerfulest hunters. Okay, the powerfulest hunter we have here is Sculptor. Sculptor has a 4.87. When I was looking at the poll, there's a little graph next to it, and she got majority of her points were put into S tier. I agree with this completely. I do think that Sculptor right now is S tier because she has such powerful anti-kite, and also her map pressure is also very aggressive. She can use her chisel both for pushing people off of certain areas, or she can use it just to find out where a survivor is, slow down healing or decoding in general. When she gets to full presence, she has very powerful tools at her disposal, and she can completely eliminate most survivors, even the meta survivors. For example, Sia, the owl is countered by the statues because it gets rid of it, and so on, so on. A good Sculptor is a force to be reckoned with, and this is one of the reasons why Sculptor is banned in almost every single rank match. But the next powerfulest hunter had a ton less points than she did, but still falling above in the S tier. We have Dream Witch. Dream Witch got a 4.41. This is over 0.4 points lower. This is one of the biggest differences between characters. And this is very interesting because I wouldn't have put Dream Witch so high up. I would have probably put her somewhere in the S tier, but I would have put her near the lower end of the S tier. But for some reason, people still seem to think that she's very, very powerful. It could be that she hasn't really lost much in the way of her abilities with her recent nerf, but her nerf as to where survivors know where she is has affected her quite seriously. She used to be the queen and she used to be the highest of S tier, but she nowadays is countered by quite a lot of survivors and also by Cypher Rush because again, she doesn't have enough time. She does have a ton of map pressure and her late game can be incredible. She's one of the highest skill level characters that you need to play in the game, so not everyone can play her because you need to put a lot of time into mastering her. Falling just below Dream Witch, we have the Breaking Wheel with a 4.39. That is only a couple of points lower than Dream Witch, and I can understand why. I was expecting Breaking Wheel to be a little bit higher up on this tier list, but once again, he's one of these hunters that has a lot of skill, or you need to have a lot of skill to be able to play him, so I can understand where people are coming from. There are certain ways of countering him. Sculptor, on the other hand, doesn't have as many counters because her movement is very easy to control and her statues are relatively easy to aim as well. Why I think he should be above Dream Witch is because I think he has a lot more potential in the early game, and I also think his end game is incredibly strong too. Dream Witch does suffer a little bit in the early game right now because she doesn't have any way of chasing it. Next up, in the S tier, we also have another hunter. We have Guard 26. Guard 26 earned 4.34, not too far below Breaking Wheel here. But I do understand why he's up here as well because he does have a ton of pressure and his camping is almost absolute. He has received multiple nerfs, and one of his nerfs recently has affected him a little bit in his camping, but not enough to be able to boot him down any couple of places. He is an incredible hunter, and his anti-kite is also incredibly strong, especially when you're going against a good Guard 26. So I do agree that he should be below Breaking Wheel, and I do think he probably should be below Dream Witch as well. That is great. This is a new one that I haven't seen too many people talk about this much, as we got Naiad. Naiad is also in the S tier. I do think that with her recent buffs, she's received quite a lot of buffs, and I think that she was balanced when she was first released, but they keep on adding more things to her, and now she definitely is S tier. I would almost put her above Bonbon, but I'm not completely sure because I haven't watched many super high tier gameplays with her, and I don't know how well survivors are countering her in places like Titan and stuff like that, where survivors are much better at kiting overall. I do think that she inherently does have a lot of weaknesses. She can cut an area out and make sure that nobody can do anything in that area, but her damage is kind of is not technically forward, it's technically behind her. So it's a little bit difficult if there's a survivor who's constantly kiting in front of you. Also in the S tier, we have Disciple, who apparently didn't fit on the page because she's too tall. Disciple is someone who has kind of been on and off recently in the meta. I would say that she has a lot of potential right now because her anti-kite is very good. Her map pressure is not too bad. She also has very good camping. So this means that she's very strong, especially against maybe lower tiers as well, especially since she's not the hardest hunter to learn. So she can be played in almost any tier, almost always win because of her very powerful abilities. She counters a lot of the meta survivors too, so this makes her very powerful against meta compositions. That is something that you'll see quite a lot in higher tier rank matches, for example. But I do think that in quick matches, she is probably one of the best hunters to use overall. The last person in the S tier, and I must say we do have a lot of people in S tier that I'm very impressed with. We have Bloody Queen. Bloody Queen just about got above the A tier with a 4.02. Do I think she's S tier? No, I don't think that she's S tier at all. I would think that she should have gone into A tier. I do think she's very powerful, and she's always been powerful, I believe, since her release. But her nerf recently with her movement, for example, and her mirror, where she now has a longer cooldown for her mirror, has affected her quite seriously. She is once again countered quite a lot by Cypher Rush, but she does have a lot of mobility around the map that does help her a little bit out in this situation. Moving on to our A tier hunters. The first A tier hunter we have is Wu Chang. I can agree with this. I would say that he is an A tier because Wu Chang has such a variety of things that he can do. His map mobility is incredible. He also has anti-kite, anti-camping, and his hitbox does really help him because he has different types of styles of strategies that you can play with him. He can be very good in rank. I think this is why everyone put him here, because I think in rank he is a very strong hunter and a very solid hunter at that. Rue Chang got a 3.75. Axeboy with a 3.68 gets the next place. I think he's a very strong hunter right now. I would also put him in A tier, although I haven't seen him recently. A few months ago he was considered to be S tier, but since the release of Breaking Wheel, I haven't heard too much about him being put in S tier because of the fact that he doesn't have, again, any map pressure. And right now, map pressure is the key thing to have if you want to be able to do well. So I do think in quick matches, Axeboy can be a big pain. Against randoms, he's very, very strong. And against coordinated teams, he can have some weaknesses, but I think that overall, he is very consistent at getting something around a tie or around there. The next one we have is Violinist, who has a 3.55. Would I put Violinist so low down? I do think he is an A tier, but I do think he has a little bit more potential than Axeboy. His damage is more aggressive. He can use his damage abilities a lot more often than Axeboy does, but I must say that Axeboy does have a lot of utility to him. You guys put Feaster in the B tier, and I'm not completely sure why you guys put him in the B tier. I thought that you guys would put him in the A tier because I think he's very, very strong. I wouldn't say he's just a semi-consistent hunter. I would say he's a very overwhelming power, very similar to Violinist, but a little bit weaker, I would say, overall. I do think he has some issues maybe in the early game that might put him back a little bit, but I don't think that he deserves to be B tier, even if he is on the higher end of B tier. I think he deserves to be at the lower end of A tier. But you guys decided with a 3.39 that he is a B tier. Also in the B tier, we have the newest hunter to our lineup, that is the Waxed Artist. Waxed Artist has only been out for a couple of weeks. I wasn't really sure where people would put him because we haven't had enough time to adjust to him. He's only technically been out for 1 week where everyone's had access to them. Most people have been kind of saying that he's either really powerful or not powerful at all. but I think the majority of players think that he is B tier, and it seems like that is so because you guys put him into the middle of B tier. He doesn't have any map pressure. His anti-kite is good, but also very highly counterable. And even though he can slow down Cypher machines by covering them and exit gates and stuff like that, it takes a bit of time to do that. And that time could have been spent chasing a survivor. If he stays like this, I would be quite happy because I think he's a balanced hunter. And I think that Naiad should have been down here as well, but again, they just buffed her into oblivion. Below the waxed artist, we have Joseph, everyone's favorite. He has 3.17, putting him, solidly into the B tier, but he's still on the lower end of the B tier. His weakness comes in the fact that he doesn't have too much that helps him in the anti-kite, even if he can slow down the match overall. His other problem is in rank mode, where most people go in duos or in full 4 team squads. He is highly countered by people who are in voice chat. Soulweaver just made it into B tier with a 3.05 here. Do I think that Soulweaver is a B tier? Yes, I really do think that she is. Would I put her so low on the B tier? It's arguable. I'm not really completely sure where I would put her on this tier list. Compared to Joseph, I would put him probably her a little bit higher because she does have a lot of things that she can use, and her anti-kite is very, very good. But once again, she fails because of map pressure. And once again, I'm going to keep on saying this, if a hunter doesn't have map pressure right now, this is where they start to fall apart because decoding is incredibly fast nowadays. I am glad that she got into the B tier. I am worried that she got put so low into the B tier, but I'm glad that she's there. Moving on to our C tier hunters. These hunters don't perform very well in quick match and don't perform very well in rank match mode either, but they are okay and you can get some wins with them. The first hunter we've got is Geisha. Geisha's weakness is her hitbox, in my opinion. Her hitbox is so inconsistent, and maybe it's not even the hitbox, but also the hitbox timing of how long it takes to use the moves. She's very easy to stun with a pallet, and you'll see this very, very often. But you can see top players do very well with her once they've practiced with her quite a lot. She's very strong against low tiers, so I was kind of interested to see if low tier survivors would put her much higher up, and because of this the statistics would be much higher. This could attribute to why she's at the top of the C tier and not in the middle of the C tier, because I think that she probably should be in the middle of the C tier. Her recent buff did make her a lot more interesting overall and did give her more variety, so maybe that's one of the reasons why she's up here now. Just below Geisha we have 2.84, we have Gamekeeper. Gamekeeper has received a big change this year. He got his whole trap ability and his hooks reworked. I thought that he was going to be more powerful when he first had his changes, but in the end it turned out that he wasn't that powerful. I think a good Gamekeeper can be incredibly overwhelming, similar to a Soulweaver. He is countered by a lot of team compositions, and again, he doesn't have much map pressure, and his movement around the map is good, but it's also not incredibly fast. So that is where his issues lie, because his traps are very slow to place, his hooks are good but also counterable, and there are a lot of maps in the game that counter him because of the high walls, tons of corners that you can go around and avoid being hooked by. So would I put him here? I would say he is a C tier hunter. Quite a drop below Gamekeeper is we have the Ripper. The Ripper is a C tier hunter. I agree with you guys completely. Would I put him below Geisha? Yes. Yeah, I think this is the right place to put him. He doesn't have any map pressure. His anti-chase is pretty horrible, but his invisibility plus the foggy blades do give him a little bit more damage, and especially against lower tiers he can be quite powerful. And as someone who's practiced in a high tier, might get a couple of wins, but I think there's less potential here than, for example, Geisha or a Gamekeeper. So yeah. Evil Reptilian is 0.01 below Ripper, and I do agree that both of these hunters have terrible hitboxes. I think this might also be part of the issue as to why they're so low. It's because their hitbox is incredibly terrible and they don't have much else apart from that. His invisibility and his ranged foggy blade. Lucino has his jump and his slam. That's about it. I think he's better than D tier, I do agree with that. Okay, in the D tier that I was very surprised to see was Mad Eyes. Now, in my opinion, Mad Eyes deserves to be much higher up on this. I do think his recent changes have affected him pretty badly, but I don't think he deserves a 2.47. I would have put him somewhere between C and B, possibly on the lower end of B, because he does have a lot of map pressure, and a very skilled Mad Eyes can be incredibly overwhelming, but nobody has played Mad Eyes for a very, very long time. Mad Eyes players, where are you guys? But this is the reason why he's so low, is because nobody knows how good he can be, in my opinion. I still think he has more potential than most of the hunters in C tier. Hellember is the next one on this list with a 2.33. Someone who has completely mastered Hellember still will lose because of the early game. Especially right now with Cypher machines going so quickly, he has no time to be able to get any of his abilities unlocked. Just below Hellember is we have Smiley Face. I would have put Smiley Face above Hellember. I know that Hellember has a lot of potential because of his camping, but I would say that Smiley Face has a much better early game compared to Hellember. He is a force to be reckoned with, but I do think he is in a D tier overall because his abilities are very they only have one type of style that you can do with him. This one makes me very sad. But the lowest hunter we've got on this list with a 2.23 is Undead. I think that Undead should be a little bit higher up, but I would put him maybe near the top of D tier. I think he is much stronger than Smiley Face, much stronger than Hellember. And well, as we said, Mad Eyes, I don't think he deserves to be there in the first place. I think he's better than Lucino. I also think that he's possibly better than Ripper as well. I do think that he's countered by Cypher Rush, and the fact that every survivor gets 3 chairs regardless. And I guess this is one of the reasons why people put him in D tier. I thought that people would put him much higher up just because lower tiers usually suffer against him because they have no idea what they're doing and everyone has a panic attack whenever there's a Percy. Seeing him down at the bottom here surprised me more because of what you guys voted. As you can see already, we have a ton of hunters in the S tier, and I was expecting there to be less hunters in the S tier. Please, Netties, bring up the D tier hunters all the way up to B tier, and please bring all the S and A tier hunters all the way down to B tier. And let's please mess around with some of the survivors too, Netties, because I think they need to do that. But I'm very interested in what you guys think. Did you guys predict well? If after seeing this tier list, you want to play a new hunter and you don't know which hunter to play, then you need to watch this video here.